The date, May 5th, 1977, Cinco de Mayo, and thousands of Mexican Americans in the Houston area observe Mexico's independence from France. That evening later proved to be an occasion not soon to be forgotten by the Chicano community for another reason. A young Mexican American is beaten to death and later found floating in a downtown bayou. That in itself perhaps not too significant, but at a midnight news conference, Police Chief Pappy Bond reveals he has charged one of his police officers with murder in connection with the case. Later, 5 other police officers are suspended from the force, also linked to the Joe Torres incident. This officer, Terry W. Denson, was charged with murder, later released on a $10,000 personal recognizance bond. After details of the Torres slaying were leaked to members of the media, city officials declined further comment on the matter, citing a so-called gag order which was never really imposed. That Thursday evening, Joe Campos Torres, a 23-year-old Army veteran, decided to go jogging as he occasionally did around his East End neighborhood. He took a familiar route, but stopped at this Canal Street lounge. According to eyewitnesses, Torres began to drink and was involved in a scuffle with bar owner Antonio Vela, who says he then called police.
Pasó. No, lo sacaron para afuera y lo subieron al mueble, lo subieron al carro. Y entonces me dijo, I'll be back to get you.
Officers then proceeded to take Torres to police headquarters. According to eyewitnesses, at this point, Torres was struggling with police, but was uninjured. When he arrived at city jail, however, Torres was not admitted. Officials there saying he needed medical treatment for lacerations he received in an apparent beating. Jail officials instructed police officers to take Torres to Ben Taub Hospital. But instead, and according to the murder charge, police took Torres to this secluded parking lot in the 1200 block of Commerce Street, known as The Hole to most officers who work the downtown beat. The weedy lot has a ramp which leads straight into Buffalo Bayou. It is here that Officer Terry Denson allegedly killed Torres and then pushed him off the dock and into the murky bayou waters. This location then became the setting for one of the most celebrated cases of alleged police brutality in recent history. Reactions to the Torres death swept through the community wildly, and Chicano leaders from throughout the local area responded with offers of assistance to the Torres family. Political affiliations ran the gamut. Those offering help were members of such diverse organizations as Raza Unida Party and LULAC. What brought them all together was a common feeling of outrage at the thought of such a brutal killing. On Thursday night, May 12th, one of the largest community meetings in the last decade was held at Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church. Its purpose? To decide what course of action would be taken in the case. Among the speakers at the rally were Mr. and Mrs. Joe Torres, Sr.
Now my son was killed he was nobody, you know, and he was nobody. He had just got out of the army, and he was a army private. And he was just getting used to the civil war. Now, is that a way to pay a young boy that went from his country? Is it? I got 2 more boys in the service. You think they're going to like it? You think they're going to trust society when they come out? Especially the police. I have been around quite a while. And yet, I have never seen a young boy wave at the police car when he goes by. Instead, they turn around and feel around. Isn't that true? You tell me it's not. Now, my children, I got some children going to school. They hate the cops. I said, don't hate them. Not all I'm not saying. There's certain ones. Those are the certain ones that we should keep out of the force. Those are the people that we don't want in the force. But they take advantage of their responsibility and the badge they wear. Now that's something that they shouldn't do. No matter what he does, no matter what he do, the man should be taken to jail, or if he's ordered to take it to a hospital, should be taken to a hospital, not be dumped in a Bible. And that's why I say this killing was injustice. It was a brutal killing without no mercy, And I want every one of y'all to back everybody out. You know, back each other and stick together so this thing won't happen to no other children in Houston or any city in Texas. That's all I have to say. Thank you a lot.
Le doy las gracias a todas las agentes que nos han ayudado en este meeting y pues, no me siento muy conforme por lo que me ha pasado, pero estoy muy gustosa que todos están aquí para ayudarme. Porque esto que me pasó a mí, todavía no lo puedo creerlo. No puedo creerlo, que es cierto. Yo sé que va a tener tiempo, va a pasar tiempo para imponerme, pero todavía no puedo creer lo que ha pasado. Que ya hayan hecho esto con mi hijo. En vez de llevarlo al hospital, lo fueron y lo golpearon hasta que yo creo lo mataron y lo echaron al bayuco. No creo yo que esté bien eso, porque los policías hicieron eso. Están quebrando la ley. Estaban muy mal. No debían de haberlo hecho. Y quisieran justicia para ellos. Y pues, estoy muy conforme que todos están aquí para ayudarme.
Also at the rally was Dimas Benoit, by now a well-known Houstonian whose own son was involved in a highly celebrated case of alleged police brutality last March. He delivered a rousing address to the gathering.
I come here today to give my respect to the Torres family. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen with my own eyes what the Houston City Police will do to people. I'm an eyewitness to what they do people when they pursue or whatever they call themselves doing, when they call themselves doing right, and Mr. Bond is standing by them supporting them. When they taken Mr. Torres and throw him in a bio after he was beaten to death, ladies and gentlemen, this man must not have no heart. Now what has happened, they come at my house some 2 months ago. They estimated 20 units of police, 2 helicopters after my son, which was also a veteran, as Mr. Torres was. Served this country as I did. I'm 100% service-connected disabled veteran. Do you know the consolation that they gave me, or the thanks that they gave me for serving my country in Korea with 5 battle stars? They shoved a gun in my side and told me, get back in the house, nigger. See, I can't say it as well as they said, because they say it so nasty and dirty. And they shoved me back in the house, told me I'd knock my wife down on the porch. When my son got out of his car, they immediately subdued him or handcuffed him, knocked him face down on the concrete sidewalk right near my step, and one policeman grabbed him in this manner by his hair, smashed because he was hollering, calling mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, because his head was hurting him. He injured his head when he fell off the telephone post in the military, in the army of the United States of America. I can no longer believe that Mr. Hi-Fi is aware of we are people too, just as well as Mr. Bond and the blue clothesmen that he have terrorizing and beating the minority, the blacks and the Chicanos. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a very few of the blacks and the Chicanos on the police force. So few you can count them on your finger. But this is not right. We are human too. The blood will run warm in our veins as it do them. And when we are beaten and terrorized by the police department, shoved back with guns, hit upside the head with flashlights, we are paying their salary. We are buying their bullets. We are buying their guns. Ladies and gentlemen, we need an independent commission to inquire, to review these policemen. An independent, which means we pick people out of our area where we live, where we are being brutalized and beaten by these policemen, and let them be investigated by our people. See how many of them can they find that is right. Now I'm sure that there is some good police officers, but how many are there who believe that the Houston Police Department is good? No one believes that. The bad are suffering with the no good policemen that they have on force. These policemen that killed Mr. Torres are out on the street. Now, if Mr. Bond and Mr. Hi-Fi had listened to what I told them, and they had prosecuted these policemen that came at my house, Mr. Torres might still be living tonight.
Hours after their son's death, Mr. and Mrs. Torres enlisted the services of prominent Houston attorney Percy Foreman. On their behalf, he plans to file a civil lawsuit against the city of Houston. At the time of our interview, Foreman was angered by the district attorney's inaction on the case and pointed out that instances of alleged police brutality are nothing new to local defense attorneys.
There's not a lawyer practicing criminal law in this county who doesn't have at least once a month, and in our case in this office at least once a week, the story of some young man or older man who has been beaten and has the evidence of it. We have a filing cabinet, one drawer full of color photographs that have been taken at our direction of such police beatings. It's so seldom that anything happens because the police are really the investigative officers for the district attorney's office, and they think, and traditionally they have not taken an adverse position to the police, and thereby they have enforced or invited the police state, which now prevails at least against the minorities and the underprivileged. It's not just an accident that the Poors, the blacks, the Chicanos, refer to the police as the law. They think they are the law. They don't recognize, many of them, and when I say they, I do not mean that they're not a percentage of fine, upstanding, law-abiding, conscientious officers. But unfortunately, it's getting more and more as the young officers come on. They think, too many of them think, that the way it's been going on here is the way it should be. And no matter how high the ideals or the principles of the people when they leave the police academy, very soon they are taught that this is the way we do it. We're the white hat, they're the black hat. We are the law. We'll enforce it out here at the wharf and the dock. We'll enforce it at back of the vacant buildings. Why take up the time and our time of going to the courthouse? We'll punish them now.
Meanwhile, the picketing continued at City Hall and at police headquarters, where various community leaders met with Chief Pappy Bond last Wednesday.
What's next? Gentlemen, I'm wanting through. Hello. Okay, now if there's any late arrivals, why? You just bring them right on in. Okay, over there. Okay.
At least one member of the group that met with the chief felt little was accomplished during the hour-and-a-half talk session.
The first hour was on the subject of Torres, and right away he called the city attorneys and was told what he could tell us. It was nothing more than what has been said in the papers, but yet the man is very candid, and he did say to us, and the other officers said to us, that they were very hardened by what happened to Torres. Not only that, one of the assistant chiefs even said at 2 a.m. on the night of May the 9th, they said that 2,800 police officers went down with Torres, or maybe were baptized in a new police department, because they said they cried. My comment to that was that I wish that there had been in that same room with Police Chief Bond and the other 5 white administrators, a black or a brown or black and brown high-level administrative police officers there. There was none. So that was the gist of my comments to Police Bond. Also, I asked him why couldn't he have any high-level police officers? Why weren't there more promotions of minorities? Why weren't there more minorities on the police force? And I quoted to him the ratios of the population of the Mexican Americans in the city and the blacks. We compose over 40% of the population of the city. And we represent less than 12% on the police department.
Would you consider the meeting a fruitful one?
I've met with previous Chief Flynn. I met at one occasion with Chief Short. I've met with Pappy Bond in reference to my own personal experience with the police department. It was typical of those meetings. A lot of rhetoric, a lot of nice jokes were said, a lot of serious talk on both sides, but nothing was coming out, because at the end Pappy Bond said that we would not get a citizens police review. Pappy Bond said that we could not get any high-level minorities in there because he had to abide by civil service laws. Pappy Bond said that that we were asking for a citizens review commission with powers to investigate the Torres problem. He said we would not get that either. So I saw nothing coming out except a police chief that says that he's going to take on the police department because he is the only man between the citizens and the police department, and that he is reorganizing the police department, and we have had no input into it whatsoever.
When Police Chief Pappy Bond failed to create a Citizens Advisory Board, various Chicano factions decided to create one of their own. Men and women from all over came to testify of alleged police brutality.
First, I'd like to express my deepest sympathy to Torres' mother and family. You know, on August 21st, I was arrested by 4 Houston police. I picked up a friend of mine to do him a favor of picking up some clothes at some apartments in Richmond. And we got there and we just gotten out of the car, and 4 police officers from the Houston County Sheriff, or whatever it is, Harris County Sheriff, they came up to us, and we just getting out of the car, and they asking questions, and they asking, what was he? He said, Mexican. They came to me and asked me, what was I? And I said, well, I'm a Puerto Rican, and I'm doing him a favor of coming over here and bringing him to pick up some clothes. And just for no reason, one of them jumped up, a small guy. They must have been about 21 years each or 19 years old. He jumped up to me and he said, well, I don't like Puerto Ricans. At that time, he smacked me with his back out, with his elbow, his right arm, and he smacked me with it. And that, from there on, I don't know anything. All I know, that from there on, I went to the hospital and they did surgery on my heart, open heart surgery, which is right here. That was open heart surgery from the police brutality. I was arrested the 21st, and the 22nd in the morning, 8 hours later, I was operated from my heart because of that. I was brutally beating on a post of the parking lot, and they had to do skin graft on my head because of it. I received various bumps on my head, and because of this, I got this on my head. That's also from the beating of the policemen for no reason at all. Then they found a shellac knife, which I'm a carpenter. I got 4 kids and I got to work some way too, so I'm a carpenter, and I had a shellac knife in my glove compartment, which they took out and cut my friend twice, in the left and the right and the back, which cost him 12 stitches. And then, because he wasn't a citizen, they sent him to Mexico and left me without a witness.
It has become clearly evident, as pointed out by Mayor Fred Hoffines, that there exists an illness within this city's police department, a prevailing attitude that any actions taken by officers will be considered justified. It is indeed an unfortunate situation for our police department, and at least in the eyes of some members of the Mexican-American community, the paramount remedy to this illness is a civilian review board with members who have no ties whatsoever to the police department. Until such a panel is created with legal sanction, one cannot expect the case of Joe Torres or any other alleged police brutality case to be laid to rest. What actually happened here the night of May 5th when Joe Torres was interrogated by Houston police? At this point, only those persons involved in the incident know for certain. The Chicano community has vowed to launch an extensive probe into the case. However, it remains to be seen what course the U.S. Justice Department and the federal court system will take in seeking justice in the case of Joe Campos Torres.
The first order of business for the police was to try and break up the big crowd. As officers moved in, they started to make arrests. The people taken into custody were young, in their teens and early 20s. Some were defiant of the cameras taking their pictures.
There was a little fight going on here, and cops started coming. I guess all the north side just got pissed off and started rocking them like crazy.
All of those arrested were taken to police headquarters downtown. They were booked and put in jail. Police are still putting together the arrest papers, but they say between 20 and 30 people were arrested.
What happened out there, fellas?
I don't know. Everybody just went crazy because the police started some shit or something. I don't know what. I don't know what it was really about.
You know what happened out there?
Bottle. That's all. You just got to hit them with the bottle, man.
Shortly after 11 o'clock, police pulled out of the riot area. They thought things would cool down if they were not so readily visible to residents. They were partially wrong. Someone set a fire to a shopping center in the 2900 block of Fulton. 2 stores were destroyed. A food market had its windows busted, and there was some looting. By 3 a.m., most of the people had gone home. The police stayed. Roger O'Neill, Big 2 News.
This is what it looked like when Big 2 News reporters Phil Archer and Jack Cato were on their way to cover a knifing incident at Moody Park. All of a sudden, a bicycle was thrown at Archer, but he continued to use his camera. Then Archer and Cato ran, with the camera still on. All of a sudden, the camera shuts off. That's when Archer was stabbed. Cato came to help, and he also was stabbed and beaten. Some of the kids in the crowd tried to help Cato and Archer.
They stabbed him in the back, and he was pretty bad. He couldn't even walk. He was fainting. Thought he was going to die.
Cato was rushed to the hospital, but Archer had to wait for an ambulance. The crowd was standing in the way of emergency vehicles. Small bands of mostly young people rampaged the neighborhood. They broke store windows and they burned cars. They burned several police cars, and reporter Cato's news unit was also destroyed. Before long, there were hundreds of police officers near the park. Most were wearing full riot gear. Some were injured. The police chief was out of town, so Mayor Jim McCann was in command. He kept in close touch with the SWAT team. They decided to pull out all the uniformed officers and let SWAT stake out the area.
Park police were called to investigate a stabbing. That was about 8 o'clock. Big 2 News men Jack Cato and Phil Archer got there just as that minor incident developed into a major confrontation. Cato says one car had already been overturned and was burning.
When we got up to the car and started shooting pictures, the first thing we knew where it was going to be bad was when somebody threw a bicycle at us. And I grabbed Phil and we started to get out as quick as we could. Somebody grabbed his camera as I was running in front of him, and he pulled that out of the way. And I went to get the camera, and Phil had fallen down, and while I went to get the camera, they were kicking and hitting on Phil. And I grabbed the camera and was ready to go, and I was just going to get him to pick him up when it must have been the biggest brick I've ever seen hit me right over the left eye. And then I turned and started to get out of there because it was just wild. And going out about 10 feet from where Phil was still down, some kid ran up behind me. And I knew what he was doing, and I started to swerve from him. I was running, and I had the battery and the equipment, and I couldn't run that fast, and he just juked me, as they say, right in the back with a knife.
Cato went to the hospital with a head injury and a stab wound. Somebody set fire to the Big 2 News unit Cato had driven. The ambulance that was to take Archer was stoned, and a crowd blocked its way. So Archer was given emergency treatment on the scene. He has head and facial cuts and bruises, and a bad knife wound in the hip. While Archer was being treated, police were busy. Roger O'Neill says their first job was trying to break up the big crowd that had formed.
Small gangs of young people throwing rocks and bottles were defiant as the police arrived. Then the police began moving in and making arrests. All of those arrested were taken downtown, booked, and put in jail. 22 people under arrest.
What happened out there, fellas?
I don't know, everybody just went crazy.
Uniformed police began pulling out of Moody Park around 11 o'clock. But then fires broke out in a shopping center. There was rifle fire reported as firemen tried to answer those alarms. The firemen did not come in until they were escorted by the police. There was also some looting, and by the time it was over, the 2900 block of Fulton looked like a tornado had moved through. Roger O'Neill, Big 2 News.
Alan Parcell and Ken Cockcroft spent the rest of the night on Fulton Street. Police figured bright television lights were an invitation to more trouble, so these films were made with a special night scope, as members of the SWAT team stood by to handle any trouble.
They weren't needed. Apparently, the anger of the people had already been vented. The damage had already been done. 3 stores had been destroyed by fire, others were ransacked and windows were smashed. And as dawn broke over the troubled area, bewildered and frightened shop owners began to appraise their loss. More evidence of the night of violence sits in a lot at Fulton and Patton Streets. A Big 2 News mobile unit, a police cruiser, and a fire department car are ruined. Alan Parcell, Big 2 News.
In all, more than a dozen people were hurt. Their injuries range from minor to serious. 22 people were arrested, and police spent most of today sorting out the charges.
They decided to